Indigenous Studies program, is a scientist, is just an amazing person in terms of all the work he's done for Indigenous wisdom and Indigenous rights and West Valley, cleaning up of West Valley, and there's so many issues that she's been involved with of so many times. So, Shannon, welcome. And Craig McIver, some of you might remember that Craig McIver, we gave him the Stellar Media Award last year, which he so deserves, and he proves it over and over again with his eloquence. He is the former 30 years, I should say, 30 years with the UN system as their chief human rights attorney that has struggled and worked for people to get justice all over the world. He's a staunch supporter of peace and justice all over the world, and we're so grateful to have Craig McIver here. And last but not least, Dr. Shyam Sri Ram. Dr. Shyam Sri Ram was just actually in the Latin American Solidarity Committee, had him on a panel last spring, and he's an assistant professor at Canisius Political Science. He's written a book which is available. You can order it over at Burning Books, a book on refugee resettlement, which is another area of his expertise. Seeing him on campus was amazing to see just how well he knows so many students. They all want to talk to him. They all approach him. So anyway, welcome, and thank you so much, Dr. Shyam. So the idea in this panel, we're talking about defending our democracy. So we know we really need to do it. And I've been warned about saying that the Fourth Reich is happening right here and now, and that maybe I shouldn't want to say that. You know, there's a lot of, I want to, as the daughter of a German Jew who had to leave the 15-year-old in 33, I do want to say that. I do want to say that. But anyway, so we want each of them to speak. And I would say, Franchelle, for you, so we're going to talk about where things are, how you see where things are in terms of the areas that you work on the hardest. So, Franchelle, I'm going to say for racial justice, for economic justice, and even including, I know both of you work hard on the environment. So, what you want to say about how that's going on right now, how those issues are going down.
Hello. We just have to scream it. We have to scream it. The nation is on fire. The nation is on fire. Hello.
Yes.
In every way possible, from racial justice to economic justice to environmental justice to the nonprofit movement. Everything is on fire. And I know that we can't respond to every single crisis because we would be in fight mode every second of the day. But the most violent act is to starve a nation to death. Yes. And that's what's happening today. Today. We are seeing our people starve to death. And this was happening even before the government shut down, right? There's a lot of controversy around who deserves to eat in this nation, right? And if you're not working 80 hours a week, somehow you don't deserve to eat, right? But that's not the America that we should all strive to be in.
Your mic is not on. We need to hear you. Really want to
put bass in my voice. Got it. We are in crisis mode. We are in crisis mode. Hello, we need to talk to everyone. When you are in line getting your coffee, when you are getting your hair done, we need to talk to everyone that will listen. We are in crisis mode. We need to simplify. No more academic talk, right? When we're standing in line, when we're cashing out, we need to talk to the cashier. Are you registered to vote? How can I help you? These are the most urgent crises that we're facing as a nation. We have to pay attention. Our office is located 1327 Jefferson Avenue. right next to where the Tops massacre happened. We have been facing a food crisis way before the pandemic, way before May 14th. We're seeing more and more the increase in need. And again, these are folks that are door dashing for 80 hours a week. It's not a handout, it's a hand up. Everyone in this room at some point has needed access and help. Either it was you going to college at some point, right? Everyone in this room has needed help at some point. We can't allow this government to starve the people to death. That is the most urgent crisis that we're facing.
So, Shannon, then for you, if you'll talk about how things are for Indigenous people right now, especially the Haudenosaunee, and especially also about our world, that environmental, ecological crisis as well. And anything else you care to put into it. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now? Yep, we all good? So my name is Shannon Seneca, and I am I have Seneca ancestry, actually as well as Cayuga, but as Haudenosaunee, we are matrilineal. We go by our moms. I am Mohawk from Six Nations of the Grand River Turtle Clan. And what I consider myself as a Haudenosaunee environmental engineer. And that's because I bring my culture to the table with me in everything that I do, and work towards helping the environment. And through my whole life, I really thought that was helping to remediate the environment from the damage that humans had done to it, until, like I went through and really got involved in ecosystem work to realize how central humans are to the environment and how important we are and integral to the world. We just have to act right. I don't want to, we've been told that we don't want to share too much without a lot of people understanding our culture, but I just want to share the part that really impacted me. We have a lot of prophecies within our traditional teachings. And in one of our prophecies, it says that the world, first of all, we're going to have all of the races of man return to Turtle Island, where we are today. And the world will become completely out of balance and will hit a great turmoil. And because we hit that great turmoil, that all of the other races will turn to the Ongwehoweh, the original people, and they'll be seeking guidance from us on how to usher in the next world. And through my whole life, I felt like that was all had to do with the relationship with the environment, and that everyone had lost their relationship with the environment, with the natural world, including your fellow humans, which are part of the natural world. And so my work is always centered on fixing the waters, remediating the environment, and also more recently, how do we bring people back to the natural world? How do we bring people to being more earth-conscious beings? And then it wasn't until literally this year that I realized that it's not that. That's not the guidance we're going to be sought for. The guidance we're going to be sought for is how to survive a genocide. Because no DAPL movement, our people were shot with rubber bullets. Our people were hit with tear gas. Our people have been trying to be eradicated for centuries. And we have still powered on. We're people of resilience. We're people of strength. And we're people that are able to adapt and live on. And that's because, now this is the key where I'm going to, instead of like ending in doom and gloom and we're at this terrible point in the world, is that the answers I've been seeking, I'm a very solution-based person, and the answers are all right here in front of us. And anybody that I've asked, like, how do we solve all of these problems, whatever they may be, whatever space that I'm in, and it really always comes down to community. It comes down to each other, and it comes down to community. And our traditional teachings, what our traditional teachings tell us, as Haudenosaunee, is that we are all equal. and we are all should be treated as equal. And that's the tree that we see outside, as well as the people that we're sitting next to. So when we talk about the earth and the plants and all the animals being our family, what we're trying to convey is that you should be treating those and holding regard as much as you would for your mother or your grandmother. But one of the things that we're not conveying is that you should be holding everybody, all of creation, in that same way, not singling people out. So when we're talking about love distribution, we want to also be equitable in how we're distributing love. And it's through love and community that we'll actually be able to work through all of this together.
So Craig, when it comes to our current situation, our current administration, and especially thinking of human rights worldwide, of course, especially in Palestine, where he's just came off the Palestine tribunal about that Palestine. But just to talk about that and our current foreign policy, if you would illuminate, like, what's our situation there for people? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. This one seems to work very well. I'm going to keep this one. Yeah, thank you, Victory. I mean, the remarks that we've just heard can be applied equally to the situation globally, and that shouldn't be a surprise. I've been reading Aimé Césaire's discourse on colonialism, and Aimé Césaire basically makes the case that colonialism brought home is fascism. And when we begin to experience these realities at home, it's very much an extension of what the United States government and its allies are perpetrating against people all around the globe. Now, in the case of the United States, it's not linear, it's circular, because this is a country that was built on the genocide of the indigenous people, a country that was built on the enslavement of Africans, a country that was built on the destruction of the natural environment, a country that was expanded under Jim Crow, a country that has seen cycle after cycle of oppression and massive atrocity. And that has been mirrored by the foreign policy of the United States, in fact of the broader West, all around the world. And if we are seeing, if we are, any of us, surprised to see the open, live-streamed genocide happening in Palestine, it's because we have not been paying attention to the kinds of atrocities that our government, and let's not miss the point, that this genocide in Palestine is being perpetrated by Israel and the United States and the United Kingdom and Germany and a number of other alliances, with the complicity of virtually every media corporation in the United States and the West, with the complicity of arms companies, with the complicity of energy companies, with the complicity of so many of our own neighbors at this moment in history. We shouldn't be surprised when we witness that, because these are the same tactics that are being deployed here. And so when we see people in Gaza being intentionally deprived of food, we shouldn't be surprised when we see people here in the United States at this moment being intentionally deprived of food. When we see, heavily armed masked men dragging away Palestinians in the middle of the night, we shouldn't be surprised then to see heavily armed masked men dragging away our neighbors in the middle of the night, as is happening in every city in this country as we are speaking. We are at a moment now where there are no red lines. Because if genocide is not a red line, there are no red lines. That's the last red line. And the boundaries of morality, the boundaries of law, the boundaries of human conduct and human decency are moving further and further away. And we ignore those developments at our own peril. Because if impunity continues to rule the day, whether it is in DRC, whether it is in Sudan, whether it is in Palestine, or whether it is in Buffalo, New York, then you can be pretty sure that there's a good chance that the next knock on the door is going to be at your door. And we all have really a huge personal stake in opposing what this government and its allies are doing, in countries across the sea and what it's doing to our sisters and brothers right here in the United States. And, you know, it's all come together, and Aimé Césaire called it correctly when he identified fascism as colonialism brought home. But he also is somebody who told us how to respond. He said, when tyranny becomes law, then rebellion becomes duty. And I think that is our duty to them.
And so, Dr. King, I want to say that perfectly into what we asked you to speak about, which is about the situation for immigrants and refugees in particular here. I know you've worked very hard on that, so if you would speak about that.
Sure, thank you very much. And this is such a great panel. I feel like we all complement each other very well. So the first thing I'll say is that refugee resettlement isn't suspended since January. There is no refugee resettlement. You know, the Refugee Act of 1980 was signed into law by President Carter, and every president since then, the minimum refugee ceiling was 50,000 a year. Trump, in his first term, was the first US president ever to lower the refugee ceiling. And even though he had suspended it, even in his first term, he brought it back. There seems to be no movement on that right now. So if you know anyone working at International Institute of Buffalo, or Journey's End, or Jewish Family Services, or Catholic Charities, those agencies have been stripped because they've also lost a lot of their funding. Because you may or may not know that not only did the Trump administration suspend refugee resettlement, they put a stop order on all funding of all refugees. Refugees who were in the pipeline as asylees to be resettled, tickets canceled. There's now a lot of the visa protections that were in place for people from Venezuela, Haiti, special SIV visas for interpreters from Afghanistan. Those have all been canceled, right? The only group that has received refugee designation from the US are Afrikaners from South Africa who don't even want to be resettled in the US. Craig and I were talking about this. They had an event recently where they had reserved 50 spaces for Afrikaners to come, and only like 4 people showed up. So, and the crazy part about this is that, you know, Raphael Lemkin coined the expression genocide, right? He coined the phrase genocide. The Genocide Convention is adopted based on his definition. I was talking to someone recently and I mentioned Lemkin's definition. And someone was like, had the temerity to tell me, well, his definition is wrong. I said, he coined the expression, right? So I'm bringing that up because we're talking at a time now where people don't even understand what it means to seek asylum. Like, seeking asylum is our right. And yet, not only the Trump administration, the Biden administration made it illegal to seek asylum using COVID and Title 42 to block it at the southern borders. So I'm just saying, what does it mean as a country when we feel that we are above the law? Right? That the US government feels that they cannot be found guilty of anything, they're not complicit in anything. So that's the first problem, is that refugee resettlement isn't suspended. We are hoping that it opens up because there are people in the pipeline who should be here. But the reality, if anyone is paying attention to everyone from Steve Bannon to, what is the Nazi, Miller, Stephen Miller, to, Dick Cheney just died, so we don't have to worry about that. One war criminal down. Even though he did vote for Kamala Harris last year. So I don't, anyway, it's awkward. We've been creepy, okay, fair enough, right? But the point I was gonna say was that there's basically chaos in the US right now. I think we know, unfortunately, that the Trump administration is prioritizing white people for immigration status. And that's not like, this is not hyperbole, like this is what I do. If you look at the legislation that has come out of the Trump administration, the policies, the statements, it very much evokes that thing which, Franchelle, you brought up the top shooting. I was recently appointed to the 514 Massacre Memory Coalition on behalf of Canisius, and I'm bringing that up because we just went to that great talk from Dr. Taylor at Canisius, where he connected the top shooting to replacement theory and the fear of brown and black bodies. And I have read the manifesto from the top shooter. He's same thing, replacement. So unfortunately, I'll just say this, is that what we see in the US right now is we see a lot of hypocrisy. Like, for example, I was born in Evanston, Illinois.
Yet why is it in the country of my birth, I have to carry proof of citizenship? Like, do you know how demoralizing that is? When I visit my parents in Chicago, I was just in Chicago last weekend, thinking that I might be stopped, even though Chicago is home to, by some estimates, 500,000 undocumented people from Poland and the former Soviet Union, but we don't see white bodies being abused by ICE. It's only brown and black bodies, which means it is not about citizenship, it is about maintaining racial purity.
Thank you so much. Yes, 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 1,000 times yes to everything that you all said. It is very alarming. The world is on fire, and this country is certainly on fire. So our next question is really, how would we like it to be? What would we hope for it? How we would like? Well, first of all, for racial justice and for more economic justice, what do we need to do? And then the follow-up is going to be, you know, how do we get there? So. You could even, maybe we, at this point, collapse those two questions into, like, what are we looking for, and what are some of our ways of getting there? So, Fran.
Wow. That's
it all. That must be the answer. What do we do? 1, 2, 3, done.
Starting with burning books. Starting by making sure that our collective histories of race and struggle in this country are not erased.
Yes.
Support our bookstores. Get this information into the hands of our young people. Talk about it at your dinner tables. Before it's too late. Get off of social media. Where are we actually getting our information in this nation? Do you trust it? Is it a manipulated AI video or is it real? Right? And so getting back to the actual sources, the true source of information in this country is key and is step one. DEI is not a dirty word, right? We cannot fold to political pressure. I see the DEI statements coming down from websites. I see the Black Lives Matter bumper stickers being peeled off of the back of the cars, right? People taking it off their lapel. It's not popular anymore. That's what we're facing as a nation. We cannot allow this administration to erase our identity. The things that we've been fighting for as a nation that we should actually be proud of, there's nothing to be ashamed of. The diversity and the love and the heritage and the culture in this nation. We can't run away from it. So we need to stand proud. That's step one. We can't have true racial justice without economic justice. There's no way, all these oppressions that we're talking about, it's all intersected, right? And so again, like, we can't talk about the harms to the earth and the exploitation to the earth without talking about the exploitation to the people. Right? And what's going on in our workplaces, we need to organize. We need to expand the labor movement now more than ever. And that's one thing that Buffalo is getting right. We are expanding and we are continuing to organize. At Open Buffalo, we have our Emerging Leaders program that you talked about. And each year we train up to 30 activists in community organizing, advocacy, and it's not to do an Open Buffalo campaign, right? It's so that you can go out and organize your communities, right? And many times organizing and activism seems like I'm not qualified. I don't sound good on a megaphone, right? I'm not the activist type, right? Everyone has someone that they can organize. And everyone has to wear their little organizer cap. And they have to start organizing in their workplaces, not just for organized labor, but organizing your friends. When Macklin talked about having those difficult conversations on holidays with the family for folks that you know shouldn't have voted for that person, but they still voted for it, have them anyway.
Yep.
Holidays should be real uncomfortable. And that's where it starts, right? We can't have an expectation of elected officials in Washington, D.C. if we're too scared to talk to our uncles. And so it starts at home. And I know this fight feels so overwhelming because we're up against these massive global corporate machines, but we have to start somewhere. And it starts with our neighbors and just challenging ourselves to just talk to 3 people in our communities. And so I'll stop there.
Shannon, so if you can also talk about where do we want to be environmentally, you know, and how do we want to collaborate with our indigenous families?
So I think it's important that we start doing indigenous-led movements and collaborations and recognizing that no matter where you are on Turtle Island, there are original inhabitants of that land in your backyard. Some you have to dig a little farther for, but when you go speak to those original inhabitants of the land, you can quickly learn from them that you can trust the U.S. government. So we have our 2-row wampum, which was originally done with the Dutch and then done again with many people after that, including all the people that started the United States. And in that 2-row, we say that you're going to travel in your boat, we're going to travel in our canoe. And I have to always remind myself of that, especially when I see this country crashing their ship into the banks. I want to just run over and grab and steer that ship and try to push it in the right direction. But I'm always reminded that we have to think of our 2-row and have to have respect. And I think that's what is really, really important, is understanding. And that's one of the things that I've loved about the Haudenosaunee. Back when all the colonists started coming to this land, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy was a very mighty confederacy. And it was going around the Great Lakes, getting many, many nations to agree to the one dish, which you spoke about earlier, which I really, really loved, or the dish with one spoon. And we were going around doing that. There's also follow-up agreements to that, to where we're reiterating the same concept of the 2-row, that we are going to have our people here, and you're going to have your people over there, and we're just going to share this land. We're going to share these waters, and it's really about mutual respect, understanding, friendship, and working on our relationships. There's the covenant chain, which is a follow-up to the 2-row, that I've really recently learned about and grabbed onto, where they had first used a rope, and they said that's too not strong enough, it's easy to break, so that we're not going to connect our ship and canoe with a rope. Then they said, well, what about a steel chain? And they said, well, that's too strong. So let's go for a silver chain, because that's something that has to be polished and worked over time. And so that we're connected, so we're supposed to travel down the river of life together. And we're connected through this chain, and it's through that polishing that chain, through mutual respect, through reciprocity and love and understanding, is all what we need to work together. And going to the original inhabitants of the land and allowing them to actually lead conversations and really lead these collaborations is really it's really my students that made me realize this only last week. That's essential part of reparations and trust building and relationship building. that we need to let that happen. So, thank you.
Especially such leaders in sustainability. That has been something that was always going on, that has not been going on since. So that's where we need to learn and follow so much. So thank you, Shannon. So Craig, yeah, if you could talk about where we, how we want things to be, where we need to go in terms of international law versus international lawlessness that we have, and some of the pressure points, things that we could be working on. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first, I'm an international lawyer who knows perfectly well that international law is never going to free us. It's not going to save us from the horrors that we are confronting now, in and of itself. Audre Lorde said that, you'll never defeat the master with the master's tools, or something to that effect. Right? However, a lot of folks over a lot of decades since the Second World War have worked very hard to build up an international system of law, international human rights, international humanitarian law, international criminal law, international refugee law. That didn't come from the largesse of government. It came from demands from movements in civil society in countries all around the world that insisted on a new set of rules that respected human dignity, that respected equality, that believed that civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights, the right to development, the rights of communities, that all of these things belong to all of us, that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says. And over the course of decades, there's this effort to build, to codify this into binding law. And there's a whole host of international human rights treaties and covenants that make this binding law, even in this rather lawless country in which we find ourselves. But there has been a real effort to reverse the nascent progress that has been made in building up this system of international law and international human rights over recent decades. And very powerful forces, both in the public sphere and in the private sphere, have been working very hard to undo that incomplete project of human rights. And I have to say, foremost among all of these destructive forces has been the government of the United States. Whether led by Democrats or Republicans, it really has not made much of a difference. There has been no commitment in the ruling class of this country to the idea that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And we don't have to go very far back to see that step by step there has been a dismantling of human rights in this country that has mirrored efforts by our government to dismantle human rights globally. And so, we saw it with neoliberal deindustrialization that imposed deprivation on our communities. We saw it with mass incarceration under the so-called war on drugs. We saw it with torture and renditions and summary executions and wars of aggression under the so-called war on terrorism. And with each successive step, those who were undoing these guideposts, these boundaries, were granted absolute impunity, and then they would swing from Democrat to Republican, and whoever came in next would not undo the damage that was done, but consolidate that position, leading us to where we are now, where we are, I'm afraid, swirling down a vortex of fascism with very few official barriers to that happening, which means the only barriers to that happening is us, is people, is unions and social movements and communities and organizations and civil society and human rights defenders and peace activists and all people, decent people of conscience who care. And you see that very much now, which I think is inspiring, because for all of the darkness of the last couple of years, we've also been inspired by the growing movements. We've been inspired by the students on university campuses standing up against genocide despite being expelled and suspended and beaten by police and arrested and smeared and lied about by their own university administrations and sometimes deported. simply for standing up to say that genocide is wrong. We've seen it on police repression and government smears in cities across the United States, in cities in the United Kingdom, in Germany, and other countries of the West, attacking people solely for standing up. That's the bad news. But the good news is, despite that, despite the fact that people have a lot to lose by raising their voices in dark moments like this, the movements have continued to grow. They've gotten more creative, they've gotten more assertive, they've gotten more coordinated with each other, and if there's any light in a moment of darkness like this, it is those movements. And we should not be shy about standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. In this country, it has never been from above that justice was advanced. Not in abolition of slavery, not in women's suffrage, not in the so-called civil rights movement, not in the LGBTIQ movement, not in indigenous rights. Any gains that have ever been made by the people. And the thing that always sticks in my mind the most, Victory, is that the United States government and many of its corporate sponsors supported apartheid in South Africa straight through the 1980s. And disseminated the same kinds of smears that you hear today about other groups that, well, what are you going to do? Let the communists take over in South Africa? They're going to massacre all the white people and all of the usual bullshit. And what forced them to change was not that they suddenly got a conscience in government, it's that people stood up, ordinary people in unions, in movements, on streets, in churches, in synagogues, in mosques, in community centers, in the Western New York Peace Center, in all of these kinds of places in society, and demanded that this support end, that we divest. And today, boycott, divestment, sanctions, demonstrations, civil disobedience, education of each other, prosecutions where we can do so in third courts and so on. All of these things initiated by people are a force much stronger than the repressive forces that are being pressed down on us now. But we are up against a very dangerous phenomenon called normalization. And we are witnessing now that more and more horrors are being normalized. As I said, genocide is not a red line. Nothing is a red line. And I think our biggest task now is to refuse to normalize what they are doing. What they are doing to us and to our neighbors in this country, what they're doing to people in countries all around the world, to speak out on those things that they most want to silence us about. If they tell us that we cannot have a demonstration of 50 people, we have to show up with 500. We have to say we will not normalize.
So, and Sharon, if you would, so what would you say, again, about what the situation, especially for immigrants, as you were, some of what you were saying, how do we want it to be, and how are we going to get there?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question. This panel has said a lot of great things already. I'll start with this and just say that I actually have an Audre Lorde quote outside my office, which I'm going to paraphrase, but essentially that when you know your truth, you are no longer afraid, essentially, right? And I bring that up because, echoing a lot of what Craig has said, this is a time for everyday heroes, right? Pardon me, I'm going to quote Ronald Reagan, but in his, I know. I'm sorry. I was just teaching my students last week about Iran-Contra, that was great. But the reason I'm bringing up Reagan is in his first inaugural, he said something along the lines of, people who say we don't have enough heroes don't know where to look. Okay, I'm bringing that up because now is a time, to Craig's point, where all of us have the capacity to do amazing things. I'll bring up Chicago again. It is so demoralizing to watch ICE in these, again, to your point, these men won't show ID. Some women also, by the way, there are female ICE agents also, taking people, refusing to provide any kind of due process, attacking people, breaking ribs,
taking people from school. I saw a video today of tear gas that went into a car that had children in it. The reason I'm bringing up all of that is we also see the acts of resistance in Chicago, which are amazing. And it's not just Chicago, it's happening in Los Angeles. I don't know if you know this, ICE wanted to actually go and get identification for people at Dodger Stadium before the playoffs, and a huge group of people literally blocked the police from entering Dodger Stadium. So I'm just saying, is we have the capacity. That's what it's going to take. It is going to be painful. We have to be willing to sacrifice our bodies. You know, if I'm asked to prove my ID, show my ID to prove my citizenship, I'm not just going to do it, right? I'm going to make it difficult for them as well, because the principle of the whole thing is insane. Even though this is demoralizing, the Supreme Court ruled recently in Noem versus Vasquez Perdomo that law enforcement in Los Angeles County can racially profile, right? I mean, they can, just based on someone speaking Spanish, the accent, that is grounds enough to go and ask someone for their identification. So that's now law. And the only way the Supreme Court can overturn itself is to abrogate a decision by a later decision. That's not going to happen right now. Right? Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh are not going to overturn themselves. Okay. Here's the other thing I want to mention about refugee resettlement. Okay, it has been suspended. I want it to come back, but the reality, it's a mess too. It has not been updated since 1980. So there's been no update. So for example, in most US states, pre the Trump suspension, right, refugees only received 90 days, 3 months of assistance, housing assistance, unemployment assistance, language, maybe some financial means. 90 days, because it's based on a 1980 system of operation. We also have a problem in the US where states can decide how they want to do it. So for example, here's a great trivia question. What's the only US state that has no resettlement program? Has never accepted a single refugee? Delaware, no, poor Delaware. Wyoming, right? Yeah, there you go, Dick Cheney rears his head. On a side note, I also learned that Wyoming was used for Serbia in Rocky IV. The greatest Cold War movie ever, even better than Red Dawn, was shot in Wyoming, because that was the most desolate state in the United States. But the reality is that, here's the thing, some states, like New York, okay? New York actually has a really good, or had a good, state refugee coordinator named Christina Morelli. The state ran the system. But in some states, the state can decide to do a collaboration with a private entity, and the US is the only country that resettles refugees where 95% of the refugee resettlement organizations are Christian-based. The only two that are not are HIAS, which was the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, and the IRC. That is it. Otherwise, all the rest are Christian-based. And I bring that up because the system needs to be fixed. It hasn't been updated in forever. So even though I'm disappointed we're not taking in refugees, when it happens again, the system needs to be updated. But I don't know if that's going to happen either, because the last thing I'll say is that, you know, in a lot of these states, they have the belief, this kind of crazy old school logic, that we're actually going to limit the benefits that refugees get to incentivize them to work more, right? And you hear that, right? Like you hear people, I don't know how many people know this, that SNAP, to your point, SNAP was updated before the shutdown recently, so non-citizens are no longer eligible for SNAP from a few months ago, right? And I bring that up because besides non-citizens, there are 210,000 SNAP recipients in Western New York. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on, a lot of ways we can help. This is why we need more food pantries that we need to do ourselves. This is why we need more rapid response networks to let people know when ICE is in our neighborhoods. And I'll just end by this, by sharing a quote from the great prophets, Rage Against the Machine. It has to start somewhere. It has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there's so much inspiration, you know, there's a reality, a very scary reality. Yes, it's on fire. But I do believe crisis equal to opportunity. So that things, as you're saying, things that as terrible as it's been, for many people, it's been terrible right along. So for some of us, it hasn't been, and now, welcome to my world. So we white people, we're waking up to that world. Yeah, your you know, rule of law, whatever it is, you can be framed. We have Geraldine Robinson Pointer over here, somewhere over here. Oh, I think she's left. But anyway, who's been framed. We know a reality for how things have been. Well, they've just gotten very much worse. It's the old Martin Niemauer quote. So what we want to do, I want to just give you each another minute to just sort of a bottom line kind of thing. And then what we'd like to do, since it is already 8:34, and we have a lot of places that we'd love for you to get a chance to do visit our vendor tables, do put in some basket raffles, and also get a chance to talk to and talk with each other. So important as Francho, and especially other people outside, but talking and connecting with each other here to help us with our collaboration, and especially to give you a chance to approach the panelists and get to talk with them or connect with them for another day, and for the ongoing work that we are all doing, or you wouldn't be here. So I'm just so grateful for you all. So if we can just take a minute from each of you, and then we're going to give people a little more time, free time here in this space, and then we'll come back. We'll come back with what the awards are, and also another little surprise, two other little surprises. So, Franchelle. Okay, you're here. Veer. Most important thing I want people to know, I am not scared. I am a prepper, preparing for the worst possible situation, but I'm not afraid. I know the God I serve. I take inspiration from the book of Nehemiah, right? While rebuilding the walls, also got the sword on my head, right? So we have to approach this fight with the sword and the shovel, right? That we're building, and the opportunity that we see right now, we see these systems collapsing, right? They weren't built justly in the first place. So they are collapsing. But in this is an opportunity to imagine something different, something beautiful, something just, something equitable that we've never seen. And that's the beauty in it. When we talk about what a just transition looks like, that we're honoring our bodies in the earth, and our food, and our labor, all these things simultaneously, and building something new and beautiful for the first time, that actually makes me excited. So I'm not walking in fear. And my prayer for everyone in this room, everyone that I come and encounter with, we're not afraid, right? We have no choice. I have no choice. I have to build something for my children, right? And that's why I continue to show up fearless. Sometimes my voice, maybe it's shaking a little bit that day. But I know who I serve and who I'm protected by.
I'm so honored to be among all these wonderful people here today. You all have such powerful words. And I think the most important thing that we can walk away from is things I'm going to echo that I hear our leaders echoing. One of the most important things that we need to do today is return to the earth and return to our mother. And I want you all to recognize that just because you might not be indigenous to this land, you are indigenous to somewhere, and somewhere a long time ago you were ripped away from your mother as well, and you just don't remember it as well as we do. So it's really important that we start by loving the world that supports us, And that also includes loving each other. And that's the other thing that's really been told again and again that I've heard recently is that we have to love each other, and we have to love each other hard and big. And because we can't fall in this place of fear, we can't let them pull our vibration down. And to me, this is hopeful, because even though it's getting bad, it's to me, their last ditch attempts. They're clawing and trying to do everything that they can to allow their system to collapse. So we can see this as opportunity and hope to do things in a way that's right by the earth and by humans.
Yeah, I feel like thanking this fascist administration for, pulling back the curtain on a lot of illusions that people in this country held for many years about living, for example, in a democracy. We do not live in a democracy in this country. It is a plutocracy at best. As George Carlin used to say, it's a big club and you're not in it. But there are Democrats and Republicans who are in it, there are corporations that are in it, there are the tech lords who are in it, but we are not in it. And because we know that, to allow them to define what our rights are is a very dangerous gamble. Because we've seen already how, over the course of not just the last, how long has Trump been in power, 50 years? The last however months, but over the course of decades, we've seen that our rights have been eroded more and more and more. And we have to be the ones who define what our rights are and what the limits are. We have to be the ones who say, yeah, I have the right to freedom from fear and freedom from harm. I have the right to be free from the fear that, yes, a plane will crash into the building and kill me. But I equally have the right to be free from the fear that the government will knock down my door in the middle of the night, drag me away, put me in an orange jumpsuit and throw me into a dungeon because of my immigration status or my race, my language, my religion, my political opinion, or my criticism of this government or of it. I have a right to be free from that fear, and I am not free from that fear right now. And I also have the right to not a narrow definition of human rights that looks only at civil and political rights, but one that understands that economic, social, and cultural rights are interdependent with civil and political rights, and that healthcare and housing and water and sanitation and food and shelter are not privileges into which you have to be born, are not commodities that you have to be able to afford, but inalienable human rights, which are all entitled just by virtue of being born human. And taking back, that definition of human rights from a government that doesn't believe in human rights, again, Democrat or Republican, I think is the big challenge for us. I'm hopeful because I see the courage of the people in standing up. I'm even more hopeful because Trump has pulled back the curtain and allowed us to see what this government and its corporate allies really are. And the mission for the rest of us, I think, now is clear.
I'll take it a step further. You said, Craig, that we live in a plutocracy. I actually feel like we live in a kleptocracy, a government run by thieves. So to wrap up on my end, I just wanted to read something briefly from this amazing book that my friend John Kreider told me about. It's called Dictionary of the Undoing by John Freeman. I'll just read this. We are living through one of the greatest transfers of wealth and power in human history, and there have been virtually no riots. Mass protests occur and then disperse. Citizen outrage is being controlled through violence, through the use of force in cities and towns, the brazen use of force. Law enforcement doesn't care if it's filmed. They need some of it to be filmed so we can see what the impunity of power looks like. Otherwise the message is not sent. They can do what they want. Meantime, those of us who are fellow travelers, the protesters and people who are paying for their beliefs with their body, or simply just for being in control ourselves. A body is a body, not a data point. A fact is a fact, not a subjective part of an argument. Knowing injustice is happening is not enough. We have to learn to turn information into action rather than apathy, because in our time, apathy plagues a significant part of the population. Information is not just leading to apathy, information is causing it. we are burying ourselves in awareness. I'll just skip ahead. He says, our apathy has turned the struggle into entertainment. Our apathy has made empathy a consumable experience. So what I just want to say is that to all the points that have been said, social media, obviously there are so many benefits to it as well, but yeah, we don't know where our news is coming from. The AI stories that are coming out now where historical figures, I mean, this is straight out of 1984. This is straight, I mean, I'm being very serious. This is very much like Orwell says, nothing was illegal because there were no more laws. This is Winston working at the Ministry of Truth, changing stories. This is thought crime and double speak and mini true and all those things. That book was written in 1949, and it is as prescient now as ever before. So again, it's going to take individual acts of resistance, everyone here making a commitment, and not just performative activism, please. We're way past that. We're way past theory, performative activism, right? We have to do the work. We have to suffer the consequences, because if we don't make the sacrifice, excuse the expression, we're effed. I see some kids, so.
So, one of the things I've shared before, it's the responsibility of the activist to be hopeful. So we need hope, and we have hope. We've heard hope here, all kinds of ways. I want to remind people that we have task forces you can connect with, so that's the Resist Militarism Task Force, the Power of the People Task Force, Latin American Solidarity Committee. We have a youth mentorship committee as well, and what am I forgetting? And actually, your task force that you want to create, because that's part of the way the Peace Center is organized. So we're all in this together. So I want to give people some time while we still have time in this event to visit with each other, to visit with the panelists, to go to the vendors and the baskets and the silent auction and the 50-50 and all of that. So we have all of that going on, and we're just so grateful that you're here, and we're all in this together, and we're doing it together, because we're doing it. So we'll catch you in a minute. We'll catch you in, I think we have that, in about 20 minutes, we'll just reconvene to let you know, and you can hear from one other surprise person. So thank you very much. We've got some time here, 20 minutes, thanks. Thank you to our wonderful panel. Here, so people can get your autograph, see how to connect with you, everything like that. So grateful. We're so grateful.